The rain was coming down so hard that night it felt like the sky itself was angry with me. Each drop hit the ground with a sharp sound, mixing with the thunder that rolled above our small house. I was 15 years old, barefoot, shaking, and holding a thin jacket that did nothing to protect me from the cold. I still remember the exact words she said, because they echoed in my head for years afterward. "Get out. I don't want to see your face again." At that moment, I didn't understand how a single lie could destroy a life so quickly, or how being thrown out into a storm would become the beginning of a story she never expected. That evening had started like any other. I had come home from school tired, my bag heavy with books and my heart heavy with things I couldn't explain. Life at home had never been warm, but it wasn't always cruel either. Still, there was always tension, like the air before lightning strikes. I was used to walking on eggshells, choosing my words carefully, trying not to attract attention. At 15, I had already learned that silence was safer than honesty. The lie came from someone I trusted, or at least someone I never imagined would hurt me. A small misunderstanding grew into a twisted story, and by the time it reached her ears, it sounded like a crime. I tried to explain. I begged. I cried. My voice broke as I said the words, "That's not true." But once anger takes control, truth becomes invisible. Her face was cold, her eyes sharp, and her decision had already been made. When she told me to leave, I thought she meant to go to my room. When she opened the door and shoved my bag toward me, reality hit harder than the rain. The storm outside was violent, but the storm inside me was worse. I stepped onto the wet ground, my clothes instantly soaked, my body trembling from shock more than cold. The door slammed shut behind me, and just like that, I was alone. I stood there for a few seconds, hoping the door would open again. I imagined her calling my name, telling me it was a mistake. But the door stayed closed. The rain soaked my hair, my jacket, my skin. My hands were numb, my legs weak. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have money, a phone, or a plan. I was 15, and the world suddenly felt enormous and cruel. I started walking because standing still felt like giving up. The streets were empty, lights blurred by rain and tears. Every step felt heavier than the last. Cars passed by, splashing water, but none stopped. I wondered if anyone could tell that I was a child, that I was scared, that I had nowhere to go. I wondered if anyone cared. Fear became my companion that night. Fear of strangers, fear of the dark, fear of what might happen if I stayed outside too long. I found a small shelter near a closed shop and curled up there, hugging my knees, trying to stay warm. My thoughts raced. What did I do wrong? Why didn't she believe me? Was I really so easy to throw away? That night changed something inside me. It broke me in ways I didn't understand at the time, but it also planted a seed. A quiet, stubborn voice inside whispered that I had to survive. Not for revenge, not to prove anything yet, but simply because I refused to disappear. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I moved between places, staying where I could, learning quickly how invisible a child can become once they are outside the protection of a home. Hunger was constant, fear never left, but so did something else, determination. I learned to listen more, to observe, to adapt. I learned that kindness can come from unexpected places and cruelty from familiar ones. School became my escape. Even when I was exhausted, I showed up. Sitting in class made me feel normal, like I still belonged somewhere. I poured myself into studying, not because I dreamed of success, but because it was something no one could take from me. Knowledge became my shelter when I had none. As months passed, I grew older faster than I should have. I learned to control my emotions, to hide my pain behind a calm face. People saw me as quiet, mature, independent. They didn't see the nights I cried silently, or the moments when the memory of that slammed door replayed in my mind. I carried that night with me everywhere, like a scar you can't see but always feel. Years went by. I worked small jobs, saved what little I could, and kept moving forward. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became mine. Every achievement, no matter how small, felt like a victory. I wasn't surviving anymore, I was building something. Slowly, carefully, brick by brick. There were moments when anger surfaced. I imagined confronting her, demanding an apology, asking why a lie mattered more than her own child. But I realized something important along the way. Living well was more powerful than any argument. Healing didn't mean forgetting what happened, it meant refusing to let it define my future. By the time I was an adult, I had created a life that felt stable. I had people who cared about me, work I was proud of, and a sense of identity that wasn't based on rejection. The scared 15-year-old in the storm was still part of me, but no longer controlled me. I had learned resilience the hard way. Then came the moment I never expected. After years of silence, our paths crossed again. Seeing her face brought back memories I thought I had buried. She looked older, tired in a way I recognized. There was a hesitation in her eyes, something close to regret. She spoke first, her voice uncertain, asking how I had been. In that moment, I understood something that once seemed impossible. She hadn't won that night. Throwing me out hadn't destroyed me. It had changed me, yes, but not in the way she might have imagined. The "get out," she screamed in anger had turned into my escape, my turning point. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse or insult her. I simply told her the truth about my life, not to hurt her, but to honor myself. I spoke about the struggle, the fear, the growth. I watched her expression shift as she realized the weight of what she had done. For the first time, I felt free from the need for her approval. Walking away from that conversation felt different from walking into the storm years before. This time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't lost. I knew who I was. I had survived the worst night of my life and built something meaningful from the ruins. Looking back, I wish no child ever has to experience what I did. Being thrown out at 15 is a wound that leaves deep marks. But I also know that survival can turn into strength, and pain can become purpose. The storm that night was real, but the storm inside me was stronger, and it carried me forward instead of breaking me. She never expected my return, not as a victim, not as a broken child, but as someone whole, someone resilient, someone who turned rejection into resilience. My story isn't about revenge. It's about transformation. It's about how one cruel moment can become the beginning of a powerful journey. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: sometimes being told to leave is the universe pushing you toward a life you never thought you could have. And sometimes, the door that slams shut behind you is the very reason you learn how to open new ones ahead.